And I want to take you straight to Apulia and get you these live images that are coming in off the G7 summit. All the world leaders together on the world stage. Will there be major takeaways that will be announced? You can see the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak here in these images. We are also standing by because in some time from now, there will be the India-Italy bilateral. Exchanges have been intense between India and Italy in the past 1 year. Prime Minister of Italy had come to India on a state visit in March 2023. Italy is a strategic partner of India. She was also the chief guest at the Raisina dialogue, and then she returned for the G20 summit. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz there. Just a short while back, the world leaders got together and celebrated his birthday. Ambassador Dogra, as we wait for the India-Italy bilateral and perhaps for the photo op here, how does this relationship, how will it be taken forward? India and Italy are also partners in several global initiatives like the Solar Alliance and Coalition for Disaster-Resistant Infrastructure and the very crucial India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor.
Well, exactly. I'm glad, Gaurav, you pointed out the more than bilateral dimension to a relationship. And that is how it is in the world of today, that you're not restricted only to India and another country, but India, another country, plus the surrounding sounds. And in this case, it is India with South Asia and Italy with the part of Europe that it is closely linked with. And in this case, it is the European Union. So Italy has a voice there, an increasingly important voice, because over the last 1 year, the Italian Prime Minister, she has risen in stature, she has risen in the sense of her responsibilities and her decisions, whether on Ukraine or others, migrant issues and so on, have been reasonably balanced, though her party leans to the far right.
Yes.
So India-Italy relationship is not just that between two countries, but that which transcends and goes beyond purely bilateral. The second thing is, and people don't often realize, that Italy is also the house of modern technology and cutting-edge technology, both in terms of defense equipment and also in terms of others. For example, all the best racing cars in the world are manufactured in Italy. Just to give you one example.
Yes.
The best fashion in textile and leather is done in Italy. So there is an immense scope for the two countries. And likewise, India can offer a lot to Italy.
And if I could for a moment describe these images on a television screen, all the world leaders have come together for the photo op. You can see the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau there, Ursula von der Leyen. Also seen in these images, the European Union chief Olaf Scholz, seen in that image, the German Chancellor. And as that camera moves to the center, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Fumio Kishida, also seen in those images. And of course, you see the back of the US President Joe Biden there. Ambassador Sikri, India is a strategic partner of all the G7 countries, great relationship with all, perhaps barring Canada.
Yes, we do have a very important relationship with the EU, and I think that the G7 as a whole, we have excellent relations with all of them, as you said, barring Canada. With the EU, with the countries like France, we have a Horizon 2047 program. So to match with our Amrit Kal, we have a program with France right up to 2047. With Italy itself, I think one of our most important future relationships in the EU is going to be with Italy. They are a very strong anchor in the European Union, and today we have seen that in the European legislative elections there has been a movement to the far right, which of course is exactly where Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is in Italy. So she is going to have an even more important role to play, I think, in the EU. We need to work out the FTA with the EU, which is very important for us. We need to focus on that. We need trade and technology agreement with the EU. So I think with these countries, it is important for us that the G7 taking place in the EU itself is giving us this unique opportunity to talk to the leaders and further our relationships with the EU. But of course, there will be bilateral meetings. There's talk of a bilateral meeting with President Biden as well. We don't know about that yet. But there is meetings with other leaders, other participants from the global south who are there, like Brazil and other countries,
Yes.
who are there. There will be meetings with them. So obviously, this is a very valuable opportunity. But Italy is a very important country in the EU for us, and I'm very glad that at this meeting where Italy is chairing it, India is there in full force, and the rapport between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is so evident and so visible and so important for the future of India's relationship with Italy and the EU.
As all the world leaders get on stage for that photo op, we see Prime Minister Narendra Modi in a traditional Indian attire right at the center. Ambassador Dogra, how would world leaders who are going into election at this stage, Rishi Sunak on one side, popularity rating, and there was this image on social media that talked about the plummeting popularity ratings of a number of leaders. The only two on a high appear to be Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Ambassador Dogra.
Exactly. In fact, I wonder how they are able to stay on for 3 days away from elections in their own country. For example, recently there was the anniversary celebration in France of the Second World War, and the Allied victory in it. At a very critical juncture, when just the height of that ceremony was taking place, Rishi Sunak excused himself, just disappeared, because he had to give an interview to Sky Television, which he thought was important for him in terms of elections, but which sort of became a bit of a scandal against him. So I wonder how they are giving their full attention, and more importantly, the full authority of their government to the summit's decisions, because they cannot, in all honesty, take decisions which their successors might not be agreeing with. And in a lot of cases, for example, Labour in UK and the far right in France, they will certainly not agree with the kind of policies that Sunak and Macron are following.
Yes.
And as far as Biden is concerned, the general impression is one doesn't know whose hand he's shaking and whether he really is in charge of the policies that are being made in his name.
So when this G7, document comes out, Ambassador Sikri, when you look at these images, these are world leaders of the strongest 7 economies in the world. Do they have something to offer to each other and to the world at large? Or since they're going into elections, they're all in a tough position themselves?
Oh, yes, very much. I think apart from the electoral uncertainties that they are facing, which is, of course, a matter of great concern for them, and they do really envy Prime Minister Modi's popularity ratings in India, and the fact that he's come to an unprecedented third term with the NDA party this time is a matter of great strength to him, and they have greatly respected him for that. But I think that more than that, the economic uncertainties is what is going to be a matter of great concern for the countries of the EU. One is this whole petrodollars issue. The other is the outcome of these two vicious wars that are going on in the world. One between the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the other the Hamas-Israel conflict.
Yes.
And in both of them, we do know that this is affecting their economies. It's affecting the whole world peace. I mean, people are asking more and more, are we already in World War III? It's really a very disturbing situation, and one hopes that these countries together will be able to come up with some response. We know, for example, that President Putin in St. Petersburg has given a very major peace proposal to the world on the conflict with Ukraine. But President Zelensky at the G7 summit is, brushing it aside, saying you cannot trust him. He hasn't really responded on those things that President Putin has raised. But really speaking, an issue like this, a meeting like G7 taking place right now with all the other leaders there in the outreach summit, that should be an occasion to discuss what President Putin has said.
Ambassador, give me a moment as I bring in our Foreign Affairs editor, Geeta Mohan, who's joined us from Apulia, as we look at these images of Pope Francis having arrived flanked by Georgia Meloni and the President of Turkey. He's talking to the President of Turkey, Erdogan, just now. Geeta, what's the big takeaway? We're looking at that big photo op, but what's the big takeaway?
Well, the big takeaway is how the global south has represented itself. Look at the number of countries, Gaurav. It has only increased in number every year. And now we're looking at close to a dozen of the developing nations being part of G7. Unheard of. Earlier it used to be just 3, 4, 5, and now close to a dozen. So clearly, there is a growing importance. And in that also, look at the countries who have been called. Most of them very important countries on the way to becoming, and in their own right, world leaders. They are of the developing world, but world leaders who call the shots on many things when it comes to global economy, global politics, strategic decisions. The UAE there, Turkey there, India there. So important leadership being represented over here and talking about what the future holds. AI, climate, energy, the Mediterranean, Africa. These are areas where everybody has stakes. There are stakes because it all depends on how the world engages these parts of the world, looks at these parts of the world to ensure stability and security. Mediterranean today, owing to the Israel-Hamas war, needs the kind of call it does to secure that region, that area, those waters. And if that does not happen, your entire shipping, commercial shipping is badly affected. And so you really need to now start looking at how to secure maritime waters, maritime security. You need to look at how to secure the digital infrastructure in space.
Yes.
You need to ensure that there is security and privacy when it comes to data. And artificial intelligence is in the hands of the responsible, not to be misused. We've already seen a lot of misuse of AI during elections, during big campaigns, during every big moment, whether it is war, conflict, or elections. So a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of these leaders, which includes this developing world. Gaurav, today, they can't do without India. India is a leading voice when it comes to this space. And that's why this meeting and this visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi was quite important.
That's indeed so heartening to hear. Geeta Mohan for joining us from Italy. Many thanks. I'd also like to thank Ambassador Dogra and Ambassador Veena Sikri for joining me here on this India First special broadcast. We will continue to track the latest developments in Italy and, of course, across the world.